Corsair Cove is one of those games that feels simple until the moment verticality, production chains, and so-called cohesion really start holding you accountable. In this video, I've put together the 10 most advanced tips that helped me, and that I wish I had known earlier, to make the base actually work. No, how to build the first tent, but rather things that make a difference when the island starts to grow. How to organize production chains, read the right warnings, use cohesion without fear, and avoid traps like all hands on deck without understanding the impact. If you are also trying to tame this vertical city and keep the fleet at sea without falling hostage to hunger and disorganization, come with me and we will see what works in practice, based on the mistakes I've already made. This is one of those tips that, once you internalize it, completely changes the way you view the map. It's not just about expanding horizontally like in other strategy games. Here the game practically forces you to think in layers, as if it were a 3D logistics system. And the most interesting thing is that the game itself hands you the solution right in the face, through colors. But many people simply ignore this at the beginning. The color diagnostic system is, in practice, the heart of your efficiency. When you start seeing routes turning yellow or red, that is already a clear alert that your economy is about to choke. And it's not something you fix later, it's immediate. I like to treat these colors almost as a production thermometer. Did it turn red? Stop everything and fix it. Because if you let it pile up, it becomes that classic domino effect where nothing else arrives on time. And that's where the game's differentiator comes in. Resolving a vertical bottleneck is not optional, it's a priority. Elevators, zip lines, bridges, and winches aren't just expansion tools, they are economic survival tools. Often you think you need to produce more resources, when in reality the problem is that they aren't getting where they are supposed to be. It has happened to me several times to increase production unnecessarily, just because I ignored a critical red route. Playing Corsair Cove well is almost like managing a blood circulation system in a chaotic terrain. If the flow jams at one point, everything else suffers. So this mindset of constantly looking at colors and acting fast is what separates an efficient base from a silent collapse. Once you get this habit, the game becomes much more fluid, and, honestly, even more satisfying to optimize. Activating all hands on deck in critical chains is not just a generic buff, it's a strategic lever that, when used in the right place, transforms bottlenecks into a continuous flow of resources. And the secret trick is not to go around activating it on everything, but rather surgically where the return is massive: coopers and hardwood lumberjacks. The mechanic itself is clear. You double the number of workers allocated to a structure and gain plus 50% production efficiency. It sounds simple, but the real impact only appears when you understand the rum production chain. Barrels are the heart of this chain, and without them you stall large-scale manufacturing. Focusing the buff on coopers and hardwood lumberjacks ensures you never run out of barrels, even when the demand for rum explodes in the mid-game. What makes this application so smart is that it avoids the common mistake of spreading all hands on deck indiscriminately. Many players activate it on multiple buildings at the same time, thinking they are optimizing, but in reality they are just diluting the impact and wasting workers. The correct approach is to concentrate where the chain is most sensitive: coopers and hardwood lumberjacks. This creates a massive, uninterrupted flow of barrels, which in turn allows you to scale rum production without stalling at any point in the chain. Activating all hands on deck at the right points is not just a numerical optimization, it's a strategic decision that defines the rhythm of your economy. If you want to dominate the mid-game and turn your colony into a rum-producing machine, this is the application that is truly worth it. This tip right here is one of those that seems small, but when you apply it in the late game, it completely changes the rhythm of your production. There comes a point when factories simply stall because internal storage fills up too fast, and if you are using warehouses just as generic stock, you start losing efficiency without even realizing it. I myself took a while to figure out that the problem wasn't production, it was poorly organized logistics. The secret lies in stopping to treat deposits as something passive and starting to use them as active transport hubs. When you manually configure what goes in and out of each warehouse, you basically create smart routes. Instead of everything going everywhere, you control the flow precisely. This avoids that chaos where fetchers run around the entire map carrying unnecessary things. One thing that works very well is completely separating raw materials and final products. Put a deposit attached to the factory accepting only raw resources, and another one, also nearby, configured only to receive the final product. This ridiculously reduces the travel time of carrier pirates. In practice, it looks like your production got faster, but in reality, you just eliminated wasted time. For me, this is the type of optimization that defines who just plays and who actually masters the game's system. Because Corsair Cove is not just about producing more, it's about making the flow work better. When you start seeing warehouses as extensions of factories, everything clicks, and the late game becomes much more stable and efficient. The game even looks like it revolves around luck because of dice and cards, but that's kind of an illusion, especially on higher difficulties. If you enter a battle depending on a good roll, you've already entered it wrong. True control lies in the numbers you take into battle even before the first shot. The secret is to treat each combat as something decided in preparation, not in execution. Ship, captain, and crew stats weigh much more than they seem at first glance. When you start putting together builds focused on fixed bonuses, whether in accuracy, damage, or resistance, you realize that even a bad roll stops being such a big problem. It's as if you are forcing the result in your favor. And there is a detail that many people underestimate: crew quality. Sailing with an incomplete crew or full of swabbies is basically accepting more variance in the result. When you have a full and well-optimized crew, the numbers rise in a way that completely stabilizes combat. I've had battles that looked difficult on paper, but became smooth just because the stats were rounded out. Playing naval combat well here is almost like breaking the game's RNG system without actually breaking it. You don't eliminate randomness, but you make it irrelevant. And when you reach this point, high difficulty stops feeling unfair and becomes just another planning test. That's when the game truly begins to shine. Creating hybrid production lines is not just a matter of optimization. It's a real necessity when flat terrain is scarce and every square meter counts. Instead of trying to isolate each sector, the game rewards those who think about synergy between production chains, sharing inputs and transport routes intelligently. The central point here is to understand that main buildings, the principal buildings, deserve absolute priority in flat space. This means you cannot waste valuable land with isolated sectors for each resource. The solution is to hybridize, spatially intertwined structures that use basic inputs in common, such as vegetarian charcoal production, which requires wood and stone, and cannon smelting. By doing this, you share the same transport routes and conveyor belts, saving space and reducing logistical bottlenecks. What makes this strategy so advanced is that it goes against the natural instinct to organize everything into separate, clean sectors. Many players fall into the trap of creating one area just for stone, another just for charcoal, another just for gunpowder, and end up wasting space and creating inefficient transport routes. The correct approach is to mix chains that share inputs, such as stone plus charcoal plus black powder, making all of them share the same routes. This not only saves space, but also speeds up the flow of resources between structures. Hybridizing production chains in Corsair Cove is a strategy that separates those who merely survive from those who truly master the game's logistics. If you want to optimize your flat space and ensure your principal buildings have priority, this is the approach that will transform your colony into an efficient production machine. This one right here is one of those decisions that define the entire course of your campaign. In the mid-game, you can no longer afford to shoot in all directions trying to upgrade everything at the same time. When you choose one of the paths, notoriety, empire, navigation, or wealth, and really invest until you get 3 points, the game starts rewarding you with ships that are absurdly stronger and specialized. And then you start to feel that your fleet finally has an identity. The key point is to unlock a Tier 2+ that matches your objective. If you are going for plundering, for example, getting a Gold Seeker completely changes how much you extract from enemy routes. These ships are not just direct upgrades, they practically redefine your strategy. It's the type of unit that makes you go from surviving to dominating the map. Now, there's a detail that many people ignore. It's no use having a strong specialized ship if your base remains vulnerable. That's where the destroyer comes in. Building a Wrathbringer or equivalent is not optional. It's what holds off the attacks of the Crown Hunters, who start getting much more aggressive in this phase. Without this defense, you lose resources, time, and control of the game very quickly. For me, the perfect combo in the mid-game is exactly this balance. A Tier 2+ focused on your main plan, and a destroyer ensuring you don't get punished while executing it. When you fit this together, the game flows much better, because you stop reacting to problems and start dictating the pace of the match. That's when Corsair Cove truly starts to shine. In Corsair Cove, if you try to fix an old layout instead of redoing it, you just prolong a problem that was born wrong from the start. The game evolves fast in terms of technology, and that improvised beginning simply doesn't keep up. Accepting this early makes all the difference. When you unlock better bridges and more efficient elevators, the map practically begs for a complete reorganization. And it's no exaggeration. Those wooden walkways that seemed sufficient in the beginning turn into ridiculous bottlenecks later on. I've already fallen into the trap of trying to just adapt what already existed, and the result was a base full of patches, hard to manage, and always with some problematic route. Demolishing and rebuilding might look like a waste of time in the short term, but it's the exact opposite. When you redesign entire zones thinking about the new tools, the resource flow improves so much that you save hours later. Less micromanagement, less emergency correction, less headache. It's that kind of decision that looks drastic, but in practice is pure optimization. Playing well here means knowing how to let go. Your initial layout is not a permanent foundation, it's just a rough draft. And the earlier you treat it like that, the more efficient your base will be in the mid and late game. Corsair Cove greatly rewards those who have the courage to wipe and do better. All Hands on Deck is already strong on its own. Doubling workers and still getting production bonuses is absurd. But the secret trick is to use this on resources that naturally stall your economy, like stone and fresh water. It's no use activating it on everything. The real value lies in unlocking critical bottlenecks. Now, when you combine this with the Entertainer's Guildhall, things go from strong to completely broken. This jump from plus 50% to plus 80% without extra cost totally changes the scale of your production. And the most interesting thing is that this rewards a more centralized playstyle, where you stop spreading production across the map and start concentrating everything into very well-optimized hubs. I really like this approach because it simplifies management. Instead of balancing several mediocre areas, you create a few extremely efficient pirate camps and feed them with everything they need. And then another important detail comes in. Raids like Bloody Bastille are not just optional content, they become part of your machinery, especially to get more drifters and sustain this production peak. This strategy completely transforms the rhythm of the game. You go from a more controlled progression to something much more explosive, where certain resources simply stop being a problem. But at the same time, it requires planning, because if you activate this without structure, it can generate more chaos than benefit. When it fits together nicely, it's one of the strongest combinations in the game. Instead of thinking of them only as storage, you start using them as transit hubs, connecting distant bases and creating a fluid network of resources. The secret lies in requesting the same resource in one warehouse and then in the next, forming a chain that keeps the flow constant without stalling production. The smartest point of this strategy is knowing how to measure how much you fill each transit warehouse. If you overcrowd it, you end up blocking space that should be free for the resources you actually want to stock. The idea is to maintain a balance, enough to feed the transport chain, but with reserved space for what truly matters. This requires constant attention, but the payoff in logistical efficiency is enormous, especially when you have multiple camps scattered across the map. Another detail that makes all the difference is combining this network of warehouses with zip lines and masts, creating fast routes that work going downhill both ways. In a game where rugged terrain is the rule and flat space is precious, using gravity to your advantage is a master play. Zip lines speed up the movement of resources between levels, while masts ensure the connection between camps is fast and reliable, even over greater distances. Using warehouses as a transport network, metering transit stock, and combining with zip lines and masts is the formula to create an economy that flows without bottlenecks, even with distant bases. If you want to master logistics in Corsair Cove and ensure your resources get where they need to be, this is the approach that transforms chaos into efficiency. Ziplines are ridiculously cheap for what they deliver, and at the beginning of the game, I see a lot of people ignoring them or using them little, even though they solve one of the biggest logistics problems: height and irregular terrain. The secret trick is to combine this with masts. When you place these masts at strategic points, you basically create artificial vertical shortcuts, allowing ziplines to function much more efficiently and even in two directions. This completely changes how your fetchers move across the map, because they stop making huge detours and start actually cutting corners. In practice, this means less transport time, fewer bottlenecks, and more production flowing. And the best part, you do all this spending almost nothing. While many people try to solve logistics by investing heavily way too early, you can get an extremely efficient solution with minimal coins, just by positioning these structures well. And here comes the important part. there's no need to rush to upgrade to aerial lifts. They are great, but they cost way too much to justify in the early or mid-game. I only start swapping when money truly stops being a problem. Until then, ziplines with masts do such a good job that, honestly, they carry your logistics smoothly through a large part of the campaign.